Hello, this is a review of the Coolmaster Storm Enforcer computer case. Now, I really like this case. I like it for its functionality and for its airflow. Now, when I was ordering this, I was first a little worried that it was going to look like an alien or stand out too much in my office. And I was really happy to find that when I received it, it really doesn't stand out a whole lot. It just has some lighted effects that add some accents but aren't overwhelming in the room that would be overly noticeable. Perhaps the most noticeable aspect of this is this lighted LED bar here, that when your computer goes to sleep, this light in the middle flashes on and off. What I really was looking for was USB 3 ports that this case has. The blue ports are USB 3, black are USB 2, so I really wanted some front-mounted USB ports so that I could easily connect newer devices going forward with the much faster USB 3. I liked the airflow of this, that it has large 200mm intake fan here, an optional 200mm exhaust fan on the top, which it does not come with, which would otherwise be an open grate, which you could just see down inside. I chose to install the optional 200mm fan. I couldn't find the black one, so I just bought the one with the red light, LED light as well, which normally, if you, I believe it isn't intended that it be lit as well. And out in the back side, we'll see later, has a 120mm fan on the back. Now, one thing to note is, despite what the box and the manuals say, there is no extra fan slot on the side. It will lead you to believe that there's an extra slot for another exhaust fan on the side of the case, and there's definitely not, but it comes with a bigger window. Even the side of the box said that there's an optional fan on the side, and it's definitely not true. I mean, not on this side either. On the front, you have your 4 bays. It comes with a plate that I don't have in place here right now, but there's an extra plate that has a punch out to take a 3.5 inch if you had a 3.5 inch as well. I liked that I could close the door so I wouldn't have to hear the drives running as much as well. Noise-wise, with as airy as it is, open on the top and open in the front, I definitely hear some noise. I don't know if you can hear it on the video coming through because the case is very airy. So it's not a whisper quiet case. Now, as you can see, the side of the case has an open window so you can see what's going on inside your case. If you're like me and put it under your desk, you probably aren't going to make a whole lot use of that window other than to go see if the thing is loaded with dust bunnies. Another thing to mention is the size of the case. Now let's compare it to my Dell computer over here that I was replacing. Now you'll notice side by side the two computers that the one on the right is definitely larger. It's taller and it's deeper. Now it wouldn't fit on the computer shelf that was on my desk before that this computer was previously sitting in. So I had to build another shelf. And remember that even if you can just barely get it on the shelf, you probably don't want to butt it up against the back of a unventilated spot because your rear exhaust fan needs to blow the air somewhere, and you probably don't want to be blowing it straight at the wall. And this is what the case looks like while turned off, with no LED accent lighting turned on anywhere. And it looks pretty much like a normal case. And now you can see how the case looks in dim lighting so that you can see that the LED lights aren't overly bright to overwhelm the room. Now let's get a closer look at the outside of the case. Now one thing I wanted to mention was inside the door here, this is where your reset button is if you're looking for it. But realistically, you only have to press the power button. And remember, you have your 200mm fan on top, your window to see in the side, your optional liquid cooling tube holes coming in the back if you're going to be liquid cooling. Your 120mm fan comes installed on the back, which is smaller than your optional 200mm exhaust fan you can also put on the top. Otherwise, this just stays open and it can waft out air as well. And remember, it has a bottom-mounted power supply down here. So there's actually a big vent underneath it where it's going to pull in air and have a fan down there, and it's going to send its exhaust right out here as well. And I like the bottom-mounted ones. One is, it makes your case more stable because there's more weight at the bottom instead of putting it all the way at the top, like some cases. And it's not subject to all the heat underneath it coming up on top of it. Now, one thing to mention on the side here is that it comes with nice little thumb screws on the side here and down here so that you can easily remove the side. Now you can also remove the other side, which you're going to want to do for your cable management when you're initially setting it up. But this one only has normal screw holes. But they're easy to take off, and you can always buy thumb screws if you want to make the other side just like this as well. And here we can see the vent on the bottom side of the case for the power supply. Underneath the case here, there's a good sized vent. And notice how the mesh material traps some dust so that it keeps it from getting up inside. So it's something that you're going to probably want to periodically clean. And now with the side panels off the case, you can see that there's plenty of room to work inside the case. It has great cable management features, so basically you run your cables outside the back and bring them around front with just enough wire to connect in. You tie them down with little zip ties as you see there. And for example, the little LED light connectors and power switches connect in with just enough cables to keep things nice and tidy. There's plenty of airflow inside so that the front 200mm fan can just crank air through, up out the optional auxiliary fan that I've chosen to install. Otherwise it's just a nice open vent on the top. A 120mm fan on the back. It comes with a bottom-mounted power supply, so it doesn't have to be at the top, and there's a separate vent underneath that cranks air in here and just comes right out the back, out the vent. And it has plenty of room for drive bays. So here's a 3.5 inch drive bay. It has a highly configurable, so you can move bays around a bit. So this one stays right here, but here's your 2.5 inch drive bay. Now it comes by default installed down here. You can take it out and install it right here if you've removed the other 3.5 inch drive cage. So there's another drive cage that runs from here all the way up to here. So from here to here is where there's another drive cage. And you can remove that pretty easily. Watch out for the instructions which tell you something about removing the front panel and the fan. You don't have to do any of that. Basically there's some screws on this side, there's some screws on the other side. Once you take off the other side panel, you unscrew those and the whole cage just easily lifts right on out. Then if you choose, you can move your 2.5 inch drive bay from here to here, and you see that there's some screw holes. You just basically screw it down. It's not perfectly square. You'll notice that this side of the drive is slightly higher than the right hand side. So basically you'll want to be a little careful. Don't tighten every screw down all the way until you start them all, and then slowly tighten each just a little bit all the way around. I preferred to remove the cage so that I can get some nice airflow cranking right on through. It also is, if you have a very large video card, it lets you get more room to your drive cage as well. Now I really loved the screwless drives here, the design. So basically you see lock, open, you flip it open and you can slide your drives in and out of your 5.5 inch drive bays really easily. And basically there's these little screwless drive rails that have these little nubs where the screws normally are, and you easily pop them onto the side of these devices, and then you just slide that rail right on in and slide it just a little bit in, flip this to lock, and then when you slide it the rest of the way it'll just lock right into place. So you don't have to find the perfect place to put it and then lock it. It'll click right into place when it's ready. So you can see that the 4 drives, match the front of the cage. And there is going to be a punch out available for converting a 5.25 to a 3.5 inch drive bay if you happen to have one. And now with the other side panel off, we can get a look at the cable management on this case here. So basically you just run wires down the back side of the case and you can tie them off at different points. So basically there's these little sections like this right here that are just enough room to put a cable tie through, such as here. And different places you'll see that I've used little cable ties on these different ones. And they have a whole bunch of those, so it lets you run wires all around, tie them down, and keep them tied away. So put all of your slack on this side of the case. So for example, these are the LED lights and power switches on the front of the case. So I run it down, I put the slack around the back here, and leave just enough, tie it down one last time before it turns around and goes around to the front of the case and just plugs right onto the front of the motherboard in the right spot there. So there's only like this much wire that loops around and connects to the motherboard at just the right spot. And I've taken liberties to help tie things at different places of the case, but overall I thought it was excellent. On my 5.25 inch drives, you see the wires here, they go up and down and eventually all cut down around the back down there. You see how they all go down the back, and you just tie things down the back, and it helps keep things nice and clean on the inside of the case. So you see I have my SATA cables. I just have a stack of 3 SATA cables that come from my 5.25 inch drives. I run them down here, and again they keep nicely tied down, and you can buy extra zip ties, by the way. They give you some to come with it, and then you just loop them around and keep them pretty nice.